Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Go 24/7 podcast. Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. We appreciate if you're watching over on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast. It's a Glen West that does not have to head to the baseball field today, but man, it sure was a sweet, sweet ending for Glen and tons of other LSU folks in Omaha as LSU wins the College World Series. Glenn, dare I say it was in dramatic fashion? I don't know if I would say that. This series between Florida was so back and forth. We talked after the Wake Forest series and all the important things leading up into it. But can you just start off with the emotional roller coaster that we go from Sunday, just a, I mean, lack of better words, a drubbing at the hands of the Gators, and then turn around and arguably, and the broadcasters said it, Glenn, I know you didn't have the chance to hear that, but they said this is one of the more impressive flush it and play the next day that they had seen college or major leagues in a championship type of environment. Kind of talk about that and just the emotional roller coaster you saw from the team and the fans as LSU kind of tilted it and ended up winning it.
So I think roller coaster is probably the best way to describe that three-game series. You can even go back to Saturday's game and the 4-3 just back and forth, extra innings. I mean, I don't think anything will top that last Wake Forest game for me in terms of just execution and just how great of a game that was. But the LSU game one was just a amazing game back and forth. I mean, you had Ty Floyd go out there and give you, I think, 6 or 7 innings and shove 17 strikeouts down Florida's throat there. He gives you just a really, really solid performance. And he broke the record, I think, for College World Series strikeouts. LSU as a team, I think, for the entire College World Series, broke that record, shattered that record, if I'm not mistaken, with well over 100 strikeouts. I can't exactly remember what the number was, but they were just locked in and loaded on the pitcher's mound. And then you get to Sunday, and it's all of a sudden a 24-run kind of game, and things got out of control pretty quickly for LSU. I think probably the turning point of that game. You can certainly look at the couple errors there from Jordan Thompson, and it led to
Mm-hmm.
some big home run hits. And then from there, I mean, it was just honestly Jay Johnson and the team punting it. I mean, like they were not going to throw a lot of their big bullets, wanting to save that for the Monday game after it got to about 11, 12, 3. You saw a lot of Christian Little. You saw, some Blake Money, some Bryce Collins. And so, those guys have, helped you at times this year, but have been very just up and down with their play. And certainly Florida took advantage of that on Sunday. And, kind of heading into the Monday game, they had all the momentum. I mean,
Yeah.
they were seeing the ball well. 24 runs the previous day, and I think there was some genuine concern from outsiders watching this team, but there was no concern inside the LSU locker room. I mean, just talking with the players immediately after that game on the field or in the press conference, talking with Jay Johnson. They had already kind of forgotten it. I mean, by the time they got on the bus ride back to the Hilton Hotel where they were staying, just a few blocks away, they had already kind of flushed that from their memory. And it was all really about just focusing in on one last opportunity to win a championship. And certainly, what you got from Monday was just an exquisite performance. I think it was probably their best offensive performance in Omaha by a clear mile. You look at the way that LSU offense kind of moved. It was a lot different than what you saw for most of the postseason from this club. I mean, they were relying heavily on the long ball for most of this postseason, and I thought they got back to kind of their roots there, and kind of what made them such a successful offense throughout the entire regular season, which was we're going to draw a lot of free passes. We're going to get getting high pitch counts, and stay in our plan and not allow, not and just wait for our pitch essentially, and see if we can't kind of drive some singles, some doubles, some hard hit line drives. They weren't always going for the home run ball. They certainly had enough of the home run ball in there to certainly kind of propel them, I think, over the top in this game and make it the albatross game that it was. But look, I just thought execution wise, focus wise, mentally, they were just super dialed in, and I would agree. I mean, I didn't get to hear that on the broadcast, but just a tremendous bounce back. I mean, I honestly, after getting beat something like that, I don't know what goes into making that mental adjustment. Um, but look, I think it started with Jordan Thompson, and we'll get into more of the
Hmm.
individual players and whatnot. But I think his hit very early in the game that kind of, I think it got LSU its first run. It kind of really sparked the crowd and sparked the dugout. I mean, I hadn't seen the dugout go that crazy for a hit. Um, I probably Beloso and Whites are the only ones that um, compare. But the dugout was certainly very happy for Jordan, and they kind of rode that momentum from there. I mean, that second inning where they put up 6 runs and just really, I think, demoralized Florida from right from the jump was really important to them pulling this thing out.
You mentioned the broadcast, and one more thing that they talked about that I thought was huge was the turnaround specifically for a guy like Jordan Thompson. And they even mentioned on the broadcast, Glenn, and I know I texted you, I said, how loud is it? And you said, well, there's a glass panel in front of you. But at any point, could you feel the energy in the stadium, especially when Thompson comes up? And look, the fan base on social media, obviously the frustrations with how he played. And I guarantee you, nobody was more frustrated than Jordan Thompson at the way he performed. But that hit right there, at that moment, just watching and seeing the crowd's reaction and hearing that, what does it mean for a guy like that, a guy like Cade Beloso, these guys, that have done so much for this program, but specifically Thompson to come through in that situation and really turn the tide, and that was a big turning point, like you said, in that game 3.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of belief. I mean, look, Florida jumped out early to the 2-0 lead. Wyatt Langford got a hold of one early and just crushed one to dead left field. I mean, it was just a no doubter right off the
Yeah.
bat. And, how LSU would respond, I think, was going to be a big part in how this game kind of turned out in terms of momentum. And boy, did LSU respond the right way. I mean, they batted through the order. They got all 9 guys up, plus a second at bat for Dugas, for Braden Jobert, and Thompson as well. But it all started, I thought, with just the Thompson hit there. I thought Dugas did a nice job of drawing the 4-pitch walk. Jobert comes up and forces a full count. And singles into I think it was left field. He does a little opposite field hit there, which was not a very common hit for Braden Jobert. And then Thompson comes in and gives you the RBI single there, and it's really off to the races. I mean, just
Yeah.
everybody had very clean at bats in that entire inning. You put up 6 there to respond to Florida's 2. And you're really off to the races from there. I mean, I thought that LSU really, kind of snagged a great hold of the game there in that second inning. Just so many different guys just came up big for you. Milazzo drew a big walk. Kate Beloso was hit by a pitch. Cruz drew a walk. I mean, that kind of stuff there. When you're an offense like LSU and you're able to draw so many free passes, you're bound to see a hit drop eventually. And I thought that LSU had done such a nice job in the first 2 games of getting guys on base and making it a little bit more pressure heavy there for Florida. They just weren't able to knock those guys in, and I thought obviously the big difference was they were able to do that really consistently on Monday, and just a great approach against a really good staff. And they were just really off to the races, I thought, after that second inning. But just a really big hit for Jordan Thompson. I mean, the crowd was just, they went nuts. I mean, it was a really cool moment there. And I think I tweeted this out a little bit later in the game because Thompson led the team in RBIs, or was close
Mm-hmm.
to the lead in RBIs. I think LSU pushed, like 7 runs over in the last couple innings, and maybe somebody caught him. Maybe it was Joe Bear, but he had 3 RBIs in this game, and all 3 of them felt really big when they happened. The crowd could feel it. Certainly the dugout could feel it. And I tweeted this out. It felt like a sports movie moment. The guy had
Mm.
gone literally like 1 for 28 or 1 for
Yeah.
29 with, double-digit strikeouts in the 20s. I mean, it was just not a good World Series. And and Coach Jay Johnson was the first to say that on Monday. But then he also said, I took Jordan in on Monday morning. I asked him to come visit me in my room. and he says, "Hey, listen, we're going to win the College World Series tonight. Is there anything that I can do to help you and make this an essentially an important game for you to come through with some big hits or some big plays?" And Thompson just looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, coach, I'm good." And they went off to play, and that's just kind of how it went from there. And the rest is history. And just a really really stellar performance, though, I thought, from him, just to bounce back in that way. Shadow, get rid of a lot of the negative words and things that were being said there. And really, LSU, I thought, fed off that energy and did a really nice job this night.
Yeah, fantastic job. He finished up actually 2 for 6, 3 RBIs. That was tied with two other guys. You mentioned one of them, Braden Jobert, the other one being Tommy White, and a couple of other guys with two. Obviously, Josh Pearson, the big 2-run, no doubt shot. Josh Pearson got a hold of one and sent it
Yeah.
over the right field wall. Glenn, I wanted to ask you this and maybe get a feel of what it was like at the press box. Obviously, Florida had a lot of media covering. One thing that was interesting to me, and I tried to do some reading of how surprised maybe the folks on the Gators side of things were, but look, going into this weekend, I think the concern for anybody was if you're an LSU fan, you're saying, man, the earliest we could get to Skeens is Monday, and they've got their horses matched out the way they want. Were you surprised, or was other conversations in the press box at really how much Florida's pitching struggled just from the starting standpoint? They got some good innings, obviously, from the bullpen at certain times, but man, they had their horses lined up and it just didn't work out for them. Was that a surprising kind of theme that you saw, or for you personally?
Well, I think coming into the game, or into the series rather, we had heard, or at least through the research that I had done, particularly the last couple starters, Hurston Waldrop and Jack Caglianone, they were kind of prone to walks, into free passes, into letting things maybe get out of hand in the outings where they struggled early. So, like, if and you saw that both didn't even get into the third inning.
Yeah.
So I thought what LSU was really able to do all series long was get the starters out early, get into that Florida bullpen super super early in these games, and you can only hold up for so long. I mean, you only have so many arms out of the bullpen. So I think LSU's approach, even in the first two games where maybe they didn't drive in as many runs or didn't have as much success in terms of scoring, they were able to run up those pitch counts pretty early on the starters for Florida. Get out of those starting roles pretty early. Waldrop, I believe, walked 6 or 7 guys. Jack Caglianone, who's a two-way player and very strong lefty. Still, it can be erratic at times from what we had heard and from what I had seen through research. And they get him out by the third inning as well. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that I noticed in terms of LSU getting to the bullpen early in these games. But just to your point about Skeens, I mean, I thought the question of the entire press conference on Monday came from actually Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU for the Advocate. He didn't phrase it in the way that what was the plan leading into Paul Skeens in terms of his availability. He framed it as, how impressive was it that you were able to get through these 3 games without having to use that guy? Because I think that was the bigger concern for LSU, as if they were in a tight situation and they knew that Skeens could help them get several outs there in that Monday game. Were they going to pull the trigger on that? And they didn't even make that a conversation. I mean, the game was like 13, 14, 15-4 by the 7th inning. There's no need to bring him out for any of those outings or for any of those outs to end the game. So just a real big hat tip there for LSU and the offense in particular on Monday, to not even be in a position where they're forced to use Paul Skeens. Jay Johnson gave a really nice detailed answer about that. Essentially said that he didn't want to start Skeens knowing that they would probably be able to get the first 6 or 9 outs with Skeens out there, but then you pull him out and Florida could potentially see that as a win, in terms of getting into the bullpen and maybe give them a little bit of extra juice. And he had a lot of faith in Thatcher Hurd. And again, look, Thatcher Hurd's performance, Ty Floyd's performance early in this series, the Wake Forest performance with Skeens, those are 3 of the most dominant pitching performances you could have ever asked for if you're LSU. I mean, they were just lights out. It honestly got to a point where we were picking the all-tournament team, and it just felt awful to leave any of those guys out. I mean, Skeens won the whole thing; he won the MVP, very deserving and whatnot. Um, but Floyd and Hurd should have been right there, and Riley Cooper, in my opinion, should have been
Yeah.
just as important. I mean, he got you 4 saves, or through, he came out and got you 4 late outs in all these games, and so it was just a really, really impressive pitching performance throughout the entire College World Series for LSU. And they were able to really lean on those guys, and that was something that I don't think you, me, anybody who had watched this team 6, 7 weeks ago could have possibly thought was going to be the reason that LSU won this championship, but it absolutely was.
Yeah, I love that. And Bill Franquez, obviously, LSU SID, which I don't know if you saw the picture of him and Jay Johnson. That was a great picture of seeing those
So
two
many
guys
great pictures.
celebrating.
So
Oh
many
my
great pictures.
gosh.
I mean, just the aftermath of the games too. We can
Oh,
touch on that a little bit, but I mean, you had Jay Johnson there with Paul Manera. You had a group of about 5 or 6 players, the 2017 LSU team that lost to Florida. They were all up in the stands taking pictures together because I think a lot of those players from that 17 team, they, at least Kramer Robertson, I know he put his feelings out there. LSU winning that series kind of alleviated some of the hurt that came with losing that series 6 years ago to the Gators, and so you got that going on. You got obviously the president and athletic director Scott Woodward's out there, Matt McMahon and Kim Mulkey, the women's and men's basketball coaches were out there. You had Brian Kelly show up for the one dud. I mean, I guess Coach Kelly needs to stay away from the baseball field for a while. But you had Kelly show up on Sunday. Joe Burrow was out there on Saturday for that electric win in Game 1. I mean, just it was a really star-studded weekend, and I think everybody got behind this team and saw what kind of run they were making in that Wake Forest 2-game stretch there, and they wanted to be a part of the vibes. They wanted to be a part of what that was looking like, and so just really, really impressive overall, just to kind of get that support, from alumni, from obviously the other sports. I mean, football, Matt House posted a photo on Twitter that, looked like half the defense was at his house watching the game for a big party or something. And, you like to see that. I mean, that's kind of what, I think LSU hopes to be. They're trying to build a, quote unquote powerhouse. That's been kind of their mantra
yeah.
for the baseball, socials all season long. And, they're trying to do it across all sports, and they certainly are off to a pretty good start with the women's and the women's basketball and baseball teams winning national championships this year.
Something special about year number 2 for coaches. And Scott Woodward doing a great job. I'll tell you one thing, he's on quite a run. I saw a tweet that was kind of highlighting all of this, and it was obviously Mulkey, obviously Kelly and the football team winning the SEC West, in year 1, and then just the litany of all the other sports and what they've been able to accomplish. It's been crazy. And Glenn, it kind of leads me into what happened today. We're recording this here on Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday night is going to be the celebration, which you and I are both going to be at, which I'm sure is going to be phenomenal and
Knock
really
on
cool
wood.
to see.
I gotta get out of here first.
Yeah, Glenn's got an early flight. He's still in Omaha.
For those who don't know, my flight was canceled on Tuesday morning at 1:30 in the morning, and I was right in the middle of writing, and I was just letting loose with the expletives, man. I was so close to getting out of here, and after being here for 2 weeks and having the time of my life, albeit I'm first to admit it was a very, very fun experience, something I'll never forget. But man, my heart sank when that text came through, and spent a couple hours trying to get everything situated, and so. Hopefully, when some people see this, we'll be out at the celebration together, and should be a lot of fun, kind of bringing an end to what has been a really, really fun season.
Yeah, the team got back today, and man, for a middle of the day, Glenn, and an hour and 15-minute delay for the team getting there. Originally, they were supposed to get there around 1:30. Fans were lined up. I jokingly said, I'm in the parking lot. I shot you a text, eating lunch at around 12 o'clock, waiting for the team to get there. Obviously, they don't get there till a little bit after 2:30, around 2:35. And man, those fans stayed out there. It was hot, and for me, just to be able to see the fans that didn't get to make the trip to Omaha, but we've got a cool piece coming tomorrow morning where I got to talk to some fans, Some drove from Shreveport. Some drove from outside Dallas to come be a part and see the LSU faithful come back home. And man, what an atmosphere! Kids excited, and I think the players too. I think they expected to see something, but I think just the amount of people, the passion those folks had sat out there for 4 hours in the middle of a Louisiana summer to kind of watch, that was really, really cool. So going to set up for a nice thing tomorrow, obviously with the celebration. And Glenn, I don't know if you saw, they have the Intimidator is covered. So already going to work on updating that, which is going to be a lot of fun. But Glenn, as we kind of wrap this up, one thing I was going to mention earlier, you talked about the pitching. 5 different LSU pitchers earned victories. Skeens, Cooper, Hurd had the 2 wins, and Nate Ackenhausen, we can't forget about him, and Griffin Herring, who all did a great job. But as we kind of wrap this up, and look, we're going to take it twofold here. We're going to, appreciate what has happened, but take a look towards the future. So the first part I want to ask you here, for guys like Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan, you could go down the list, Cade Beloso, guys that have meant so much to this program. What was it like when you kind of knew these guys were going to be their last at bat, and what kind of lasting impact as these guys go on to do whatever they're going to do, whether it's in baseball or something else, and a lot of them are going to have a great future in baseball. What do they mean to this LSU program?
Oh, I think they mean a great deal. I mean, just the legacies that they're leaving behind. That was the question that I asked all 4 of the players in the press conference after the game. Just when you're looking back at this thing 20 years from now, what do you think you're going to remember most, kind of deal? And just wanted to leave it open-ended for those guys. And the first one to answer was Beloso, and he gave probably really just one of the better answers you could hope for. Is, I'm happy we won a national championship, but I'm also pretty sad that, this thing is over and that we don't get to play and practice together anymore. He made a nice little joke at the end about the reunions and how fun those are going to be, because they'll have 10, they'll have 15, 20, 30, 35, 40-year reunions for this team. And it'll be really great just getting to watch those guys go back to the box and, deservedly so, get a ton of praise and applause. This was a team that had all the expectations in the world on them in the preseason. I mean, they were preseason number 1. They were number 1 in the country for 12 straight weeks to open the year. Went through some injuries, went through some struggles towards the end of the regular season. Certainly could have let that kind of hinder your performance in postseason play. But credit to those guys, man. They kept battling, they kept competing. And I thought really the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and if you include, all the regionals, super regional, and certainly all the Omaha stuff as well, I thought they played their best baseball. Honestly, I thought the regional was really great. Super regional against Kentucky, they pretty much dominated. And then in the College World Series, you had the pitching performances of their lives. I mean, I thought that like I said, the pitching staff really carried this team. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the legacies and all that stuff, I mean, I think once we get away from it a little bit, kind of have more time to process it, you'll kind of really understand just how much this team has meant. I mean, I think the hope here is that you're starting another dynasty here under Jay Johnson. I think there's a hope that you'll be back in this tournament, back in this College World Series sooner than later. You'll be competing for another championship in the next several years. And that's kind of the expectations that are on this program. And after 14-year drought, I would imagine that now in the age of NIL and transfer portal, a lot of these players that are going to be looking at what LSU just did, looking at all the fans that were out there in Omaha, 25,000 strong, mainly LSU fans, taking over that tournament and having an opportunity to be in those situations. That's going to be hard to turn down if you're a college player, if you're a high school player. I think that there's a lot of momentum that Jay Johnson can now run with here in the future. And a lot of these guys are going to be back and around the program. I mean, that's kind of been the MO over the last several years. I mean, Bregman comes back. All these former greats always are back in the building and around the facilities in the off season. And certainly I would expect the same to be said about the Dylan Cruzes of the world and Paul Skeens and Trey Morgan and Gavin Dugas and all these guys that are going to be so vital to, I think, the community here moving forward, and certainly the LSU baseball brand. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they capitalize on this momentum, because I think that they've really got a chance to do something special here over the next several years.
We're going to have loaded coverage through the month of July. Obviously, we know football season's coming, but recruiting for baseball, not only in the high school ranks and looking more at that class coming in. Because I'll say this, I remember Gavin Guidry saying before they left for Omaha, the upperclassmen told the freshmen when they came back, he said, look, you're not true freshmen anymore. We need you if we're going to win a national title. I imagine that's going to be the message for the 24 class. We're going to take a more in-depth look at that here in the month of July as we get ready to turn the calendar over. And then also the transfer portal. We've got some great information where things might be leaning, where things might be heading. But Glenn, kind of to wrap it up right here, you talked about the legacy. I talked with a fan today who made his way from Texas, and he had he was decked out in purple and gold, and I asked him what it meant to him as a fan. And he talked about, how his family grew up LSU fans. It was entrenched. His dad, he had watched games with his dad and stuff like that. But one thing he brought the point was seeing LSU back on top of the baseball world. When you hear that phrase, what do you think it does for the future? And you kind of went into it, but the future of this program, and it's the sky really the limit for this team and this program going forward?
I think so. I mean, I think it's one of the elite brands in all of college baseball. I mean, you look up and you see LSU playing in the College World Series. It feels right. I mean, I was walking around a lot in the last couple of weeks just talking with folks that were a part of Omaha, that worked the grounds and the security and the facilities and the Fan Fest area. They say when LSU's around, it's just different. I mean, it is. It's the just because of the atmosphere and the players that are usually coming through and playing for the team at the time. There's just always a level of intrigue and excitement that comes with those games that they're a part of, and you could tell that they really, really enjoyed and that having LSU there. And there's nothing more that you can say other than the fact that they had 88,000 Jello shots over a 2-week period, and pretty much I think probably made that restaurant's year. I mean, I can't imagine that
oh
restaurant
my gosh.
will have to do much in terms of just more
sales,
making more money. Yeah, sales. I think they've made their yearly quota in about 2 weeks there with LSU, and so it's that kind of stuff, man. I mean, I think that the fan base here really brings it. They've been missing that opportunity to go back to Omaha for 6 years, and they turned out. And I think that if the LSU continues to do this, they certainly won't stop showing up. It'll be really, really fun to see, and we'll see how far this thing can go and what kind of dynasty can be created here.
Well, I guess the only thing left to say is get some rest. We hope you get back on your flight, and I think you're taking a little vacation off before we ramp it back up for football season. Glenn, with the fingers crossed there. Any big plans, Glenn, for the month of July? You got anything big planned?
No, I mean, I got the vacation coming up for a few days. Then we're off to SEC Media Days. I actually have to plan that trip. We're going to be heading up to SEC Media Days for a few days in Nashville, where our headquarters are. So might get to meet a couple of the national guys over in Nashville. And then a couple weeks after that, it's back to the grind of fall camp and getting ready for the season. It's going to be really interesting, fun, I think, football season for LSU. They got a lot of great opportunities here, and we'll see what happens. But I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, get some rest, get on your flight, and make it back to Baton Rouge. We'll see you back here in Louisiana very soon.
That's all that I want to do. That's all that I want to do for the next 24 hours.
Just 24 hours. Just get you home. There we go.
Home.
Right. Absolutely love it. Glen West, Bryce Koon here on the Go 24/7 podcast. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in all season long to the baseball coverage. We really ramped it up, and we're going to continue it. It does not stop with a national title. A lot of recruiting, a lot of transfer portal news. And so if you haven't already, down in the description below here on YouTube and wherever you're finding the audio podcast, you can click the link over to Go247, our website. Continue to subscribe to the channel. Continue to like it as we keep growing this for what is going to be a fun time of the year, man. I don't know if with LSU sports, if there is not a fun time of the year right now with the way this athletic program is continuing to go. Bryce Koon, Glen West here on the Go247 podcast. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your day wherever you're listening, and we enjoyed having you.